Awesome. Hi, everyone. Hope you are all safe and healthy. Today, we're joined with Afshan. Diving into our topic for today, I know how hard it is to plan and travel by yourself, especially as a female. For many years, I had only traveled with my family, and when I had a taste of independence, there were some differences in how I went about traveling. Among all the problems in the world that we are focused on as women, we need to try and factor in an extra safety tip wherever we go. On top of that, aside from all our focusing on staying safe, it can get really hard to think about other things, such as traveling sustainability. But this is still very doable. For all you travel lovers out there who are unsure about traveling by yourselves, follow along. This can be useful for college, studying abroad, or a trip that you plan by yourself. So, Afshan, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, hi everybody. My name is Afshan. I'm 23. I graduated from McGill University a year ago. I'm from Massachusetts, but I'm Canadian, so chose to go to school in Canada. Um, After that, basically, I have been in marketing. I started in marketing basically in 2017. I started a blog that essentially aims to bridge the worlds between South Asia and what's going on in modern day contemporary South Asia and the South Asian diaspora abroad. So, kind of trying to connect the two and keep South Asians here updated as to the really cool things that are happening in South Asia and maybe even encouraging them to go visit and make the place their own.
That's awesome.
So what are some of the places that you've traveled to?
In the world, I've been to like a lot of places actually because my mom used to travel a lot for work. So I've been to like God, Mexico, Brazil, Malaysia, India, Kuwait, UAE, Pakistan, Egypt, a lot of Europe, England, France, Italy, Spain, blah, blah, blah. Anywhere interesting that I've been? I think I actually loved Mexico, which is like Mexico is so close. So I don't know. I guess like I went again for the first time in a while this past year, and just to see like the difference between like how Trump like makes it seem. We went to like Guadalajara in Mexico. I was just like, "Ugh, I hate this man because Mexico's amazing and the people are amazing, and I just hate that it gets like ruined. So I love Mexico, but I love India. And where else do I love? Think one of my favorite places I've been is Florence, Italy.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. So we have a global citizen here. So, how old were you when you first started traveling by yourself?
So by myself, I think I was like 14, 15.
Oh,
I started going to India by myself. I had also been somewhere else by myself, but I can't remember. Um, yeah, so I started going to India by myself. It's a little bit different because it's not like I was backpacking. I had like we have a house in India, um, and so that was like my first experience alone. But I actually found it quite nice because I was in high school. Um, in high school you think your world is ending because like you have these weird friends and these weird love interests and things like that. So it was like kind of my time to get away. And sync right back to reality and understand what was like important in the world and what wasn't.
mm,
So that was like the first time I started traveling alone.
awesome.
So, how did you prepare for leaving? So, like, did you make sure to pack certain things that were like safety precautions or like just like stuff to fit into like the climate where you were or anything?
Yeah, so like in packing for India is definitely a task because completely different climate, completely different sense of dressing, especially back then. I think now it's evolved a lot, but when I was like 15, I had to like buy specific clothes for like summer in India. So like loose pants and um, like linen pants and stuff like that, and then like appropriate tops. Like can't really wear crop tops like where I'm from in India. And then other things that I used to prepare, I always bring like some standard medication like Pepto Bismol, Tums, because you will often get like food poisoning or indigestion when like you're traveling somewhere with a new bacteria. Um, what else do I bring? Uh, that what is it? Emergency. It's like vitamin C,
Mhm.
uh, which is like so important to like help keep your immune system high and running well. What else do I bring? Cliff bars. I used to bring a lot of Cliff bars and mac and cheese because I was like always really scared of eating in India, eating like different things because I would always get an upset stomach. Now, scarily enough, I'm very immune to a lot of things, which I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I don't know what worms are in my stomach, but I used to get very sick, so I would bring like mac and cheese and stuff like that. And then sunscreen and other like the thing is like when you go to places like India, you get medication for very cheap. Uh,
Right.
so I wouldn't bring like antibiotics because you can get it there for like literally 50 cents.
Right.
But that would be like the main things that I would bring. Camera,
And watching water consumption too. I know that's a
yeah,
huge thing.
yeah, that is definitely not my forte, but I learned it in India. I would just like keep a water bottle um, in my fridge like every day, and then when I would go to teach in the village, like in the morning, I would take it and it would be frozen, and I would have that for the day.
Yeah. So, what are some of the precautions that you took prior to traveling there, and how was it different in reality?
Some of the precautions I took, I don't even know if I took precautions. I don't know, not much. Like back then when I used to go, like even getting a SIM card was difficult, and like we didn't really have like 3G in India. So like I don't even know what I could have done as a precaution. I think I had vaccines, but like I had the vaccines when I was really little.
Right.
Um, so I honestly maybe I did a little bit of research before on like what I could go visit and have fun doing. But that was it. I didn't take much precautions. I should have.
Um, what are some like preconceptions to traveling before? Because like you mentioned before in like Mexico and how like we view Mexico here versus how it actually is. Like, did you find that in other places around the world too?
Yeah, I think that so I've also been to Brazil, which I think a lot of people are very hesitant to travel to. I spent like 2 weeks there for like a study abroad program when I was in college, and people were like are really nervous to go to Brazil because obviously there's like a high crime rate. Um, but like I don't know, we were out late and nothing happened. I'm not saying that nothing can happen, but I enjoyed my time there. The people are really nice and friendly. So and then other places I've been to, mm, I guess I think India. A lot of people think that it can be very unsafe, and I mean, of course, any place can be unsafe. To be quite honest, I think it just depends a lot on you knowing where you're going and knowing how to behave and knowing um, and having like certain measures in place. So like for me in India, like I always have someone's number in my phone where I can call for help, or like you should probably register with the embassy that you're a part of, the U.S. embassy. I'm a Canadian, so I'll register with the Canadian embassy if you're there in case anything happens. Have their number on speed dial, like those things. But I think that I mean I guess I was nervous sometimes, like to travel in Delhi alone. I still feel that way just because it's a very big city. So it's not like my hometown in India where, um, you know, wherever I go, I have an idea of where I am, and like, and I have an idea of like what direction I'm going in. Whereas in Delhi, it's so big, and and there's a lot of like, it's like New York, so there's a lot of people from outside of town. So sometimes you'll see that even your like little auto drivers, like those little auto rickshaws, they won't even know where you're going, so you have to guide them. So stuff like that, if you're going as like a complete like bubblehead and like not knowing anything, or not having Google Maps on your phone, which growing up there was no Google Maps in India, it only came like probably like a few years ago, um, then you have to take those precautions because these are just very big and different places, so you have to always be aware of your surroundings and where you are.
Right. Yeah. So, how did you acclimate yourself to the culture of the places that you've traveled to prior to going?
um, I think what I would do is I always do like a little bit of research on like the spots that people always go to, and then I try to find some places that are a little bit different, or a little bit like offbeat. Um, and I always try to learn like some phrases of the places that I'm going to, like how much does this cost, or like how are you, or hi, or thank you. Um, like I did that for Brazil, and that was fun. Um, and then so I always try to prep a little bit on the language, and then what else? There are usually like good guides online. Um, I try to speak to people who are from those places and see what they have to say as well, in terms of like behavior and dressing style and stuff like that. So I definitely did that when I was going to different places in the south of India, because I had never been, and the culture is different than North India. So, like for example, when I was going to Mumbai, I asked some people from Mumbai, like what do I wear when I go to these places? What's safe, what's not safe. Um, so yeah, just using personal references, and then online has a lot of resources, but they also have like a lot of very stupid resources that I wouldn't always trust. So just do thorough research.
So after like traveling to so many places, what are some like female friendly tips that you've accumulated?
Um, Female friendly tips. So always check the dressing style before you go to a certain place. And if you don't know, then be safe and just dress a little bit more conservatively. Um, and especially if you don't know your agenda for the day, like places like India, and I would even argue places like in Brazil, like in Sao Paulo, like there there are there are certain pockets of places that like are very different than other pockets of places. And so if you're not sure where that day is going to take you, I would just dress on the safe side, um, as a girl. And I know that, like, we should be able to wear whatever we want, but you also just have to take precautions.
Yeah.
um, and I guess other precautions as a girl, always have a working SIM card. Don't go anywhere without a not working SIM card with internet and like phone usage. Like I think that's a really stupid thing for people to do. You should always have access to a phone because you never know where you're going to end up and who you're going to have to call. Um, and then other precautions, mm, download the Google Map on your phone, so that in case you lose service or anything, you still have it offline. Um, and understand the transportation beforehand. So there are some places, like even in India, that don't have Uber. Um, so you should definitely be aware if a place you're going to doesn't have Uber, doesn't like, or what's the transportation mode. You should figure that out beforehand because you don't want to get stranded in a place and like not know how to get to point B.
Mhm.
So definitely understand that and other precautions.
And I'd
Mm,
like to add, this is not saying that you can't go to places that are more local. Like, this is totally be open to immersing into the culture because every culture is different and everything you read, remember, like, that's just the top stories and that's usually uncommon. But, just being aware and maybe not making yourself seem vulnerable, but just going in with the right knowledge is a great way to build these skills.
exactly. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I remember I read this, there was like this YouTube link and it was like why I left India after the third day as a female traveler. And like I watched her video and I was like, why were you wandering in like this random village in your yoga pants and like you're also white, like, and you don't think people are gonna look at you? Like
Right.
it doesn't make any sense to me. So just keep those things in mind, and especially if you look different, if you're not like a brown girl going back to India, if and even then people will still stare at me because they know that I'm not from there. They
Right.
have a sense. So if you're not brown and you're going to a place that people are brown and you like just stand out from your appearance, then I would definitely take extra precautions, because you don't want to seem vulnerable and you don't want to seem lost. You need to like look like you have a sense of where you are and where you're going. So yeah, taking those precautions and understanding the area beforehand.
And that respect doesn't translate to appropriation or anything. It's just taking the right because you're going there and you're sharing their culture they're sharing with you. So it's kind of merging and bridging that gap.
Yeah, definitely.
So how have you been able to travel sustainably within all of these places you've been to?
So I definitely haven't been able to travel sustainably to all of these places, but I think in India, and in other countries, like this is starting to pop up, but these kind of like heritage properties, are starting to evolve and the government is starting to protect them as well. So they're like called like non-hotel hotels. So there are places that you can stay that basically all of the workers are from the local area. The food is local. The decorations are local, and the place itself is like old and local. And so they're able to give money to kind of like sustain that place. So being able to do all of that, I think, is a really important way to travel. Obviously, this is a new concept, so it's not going to be everywhere. But I think that traveling in that way is quite important because you're not, you're keeping every place, um, and like trying to sustain its actual heritage. Because if you go to, let's say, a Best Western, okay, you go to a Best Western in Canada and you go to a Best Western in India, they're going to be relatively the same thing. So what are you gaining from going to a place like that, other than just like, oh, well, I know what a Best Western is? You should be able to go to a place that is safe and is nice, but also like allows you to immerse yourself in the culture, from like where you're sleeping and what you're eating and all of those things, and who you're interacting with as well. You can learn a lot. So I remember like when I went to Shimla, which is in the Himalayas in India, um, we had like this. It was like gorgeous, and all of the people who were working in the hotel um, were from Shimla, and we had this guide who took us like on a strawberry trail, and he was telling us like about Shimla and life in Shimla and growing up in Shimla, and like having that experience was like so great because we were able to interact with someone who was actually from there and learn about his life and learn about what the actual like day to day is like there.
Do you have any suggestions for any places that you've been to that were more sustainable, like these hotel?
Yeah,
Um,
so there's one really great chain called Neemrana Hotels. I would definitely check that out. I've been to their property in a place in Rajasthan in India. But they have places all over. These kind of like places that aren't really visited as much in India, which is like pretty interesting. And in I went to a place in Kerala, in Kochi. The city was called Kochi, and there was a little, not hostel, but it was a heritage property called Forte Kochi. Yeah, just Forte Kochi, and like fort, but with an E at the end. And it was like this super beautiful yellow structure. It was completely like refurbished, so it didn't have like that old anything. And it was like very like Kerala culture. People were from there, locals. They knew exactly where you should eat and do this and that. That was an amazing experience. I loved that hotel. And even in Goa, I went to a place called Ahelia Resorts, I think it was called, and that was maintained by locals. And the place was like a home. It was someone's villa that they had turned into like a little. It was a very small. I think there was like only 3 rooms or 4 rooms, but that was gorgeous, and it was like right in the local area. So as soon as you stepped outside, there was just like locals around. So that was really interesting. I would definitely recommend that. And then in there's also this thing called Zostel in India, which is like hostels, but they're a little bit more, I guess, safe and maintained, and maybe a little bit more pricey, but you do get what you pay for. So as a female traveler, if I had to stay in a hostel, I would choose Zostels, and they're all across India, and they're even in Nepal now.
oh, awesome.
Um, so how was that in comparison to like some of your travels that have been more tourist driven? Like, what's it like going to smaller villages versus like staying in the more touristy areas?
I mean, I think I like it much more. I think when you go to smaller places like that you can kind of just like walk around and get lost and know that everything is going to be fine. Like, I just feel like you develop more of a connection with the place rather than being guided from site to site. Like, I think just being able to wander between streets, you just feel a little bit more comfortable in the place. That's what I loved about Kochi and Kerala. Um, like, I think it is relatively touristy, but it's a lot of local tourists, like a lot of Indian tourists, and I think it was just such a safe place. And like you saw, like at sunset, everyone goes to the beach, even the people from Kochi, and just like sits there with their family and eats ice cream. And like we went to do that, and we saw everyone doing it, so we were like, oh hey, like I think we should do this. and we just like sat there and watched the sunset with everyone, and it was like so nice, so gorgeous. um so like being able to do those things, I think it really allows you to do what the people are doing. And that's so much more interesting than being in this like AC, like n- like very nice place, but then being so separated from the actual people around.
Yeah, I think if you're staying in like in hotels in very touristy areas, it's really useful to talk to like the people that work there,
Yeah,
because I went to my parents, we went to this like really touristy area in Greece, but we were
yeah,
still talking with like the people that like work there, and it
yeah,
turns out that there's like this college student and he was working part-time during like the summer touristy season, and he'd like go to his home island, and I just learned like so much from him. And then he would just like point out places that we should be like visiting on the touristy island, and I
yeah,
think like that is just so useful with
definitely,
getting the experience.
definitely.
And
Yeah,
they
it's speaking to people there. Oh, sorry.
oh, and they always have the best locations, like places that are never on your like list that the
Yeah,
other places show you.
yeah, definitely.
Were you saying something? Did you want
Oh, no, no, that's fine.
to? What is one aspect of traveling that you wish you could have done differently?
Mm, I think I went to a lot of places while I was growing up with my family, and I wish like I had been like I'm trying to re-go to all of those places because I think I see them in a very different light now. Um, Now that like I understand a little bit about how I like to travel. Um, so wait, what was your question again?
So, like, if you could have, like, what is something you would have done differently while
Oh,
traveling?
yeah. Yeah, so I think I would have just like changed the kinds of places that I was staying in. Um, like I am still like a bit of a neat freak and I'm very bougie, so like I don't think I'm gonna be able to stay in like those real hostels, but just like take it down like one notch, which is why I'm really glad that I haven't been too much like Southeast Asia because I think that's definitely how I want to be experiencing it. Um, and like there was this one place I went to, like it's only a 45 minute ferry from Singapore. It's an island in Indonesia called Bintan, and it is like a very luxurious resort that we stayed at. It's called the Sanchaya, but all of the people and the food, it was all like local, from like that island of Bintan, Indonesia, and it was just like I think that changed my perspective a lot on traveling because I went there with my whole family. So you can still mix luxury with like the heritage stuff. Um, so I think I would definitely go back and change like all of my vacations like to be like that.
So what is like one memory that stands out of all your trips?
Mm. So I recently went to Italy literally right before COVID.
Mhm.
I think like the outbreak was happening and we didn't know when I was in Italy. But I went to, and I had been to Italy a lot before because we used to do cruises when I was growing up, and which is like why I've been to like a lot of places. And all of the cruises would start from Italy because they have like a huge port in Rome. And so I had been to Rome like a lot, and I had been to other places in Italy, but I had never been to Florence. And so I went to Florence this past February, and we got an Airbnb that was like the famous thing in Florence is like the Duomo. And we got an Airbnb that was like literally, I think if you reach your hand out far enough, like you could touch it. It was like directly in front of it, and it was just like amazing. Like I loved Florence. I loved it, and I felt like I had seen everything I needed to in Italy. But then that trip made me feel like, okay, first of all, I hadn't seen everything. Second of all, like that was just one of the most magical cities ever. Like the people there, the food there, and Florence is one of those cities that you can kind of just walk around and get lost, and it's fine. Um, we went to like this Michelangelo um, like plaza, and like you walk up all these steps, and like there are people like playing music, and you just get to like watch sunset over like Florence, and it's like super romantic. um but I absolutely love that. Florence is amazing. I loved it.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Do you have any lasting tips or anything you'd like to share?
I think um like a really big way that I've been able to learn so much about this stuff is just curating my Instagram space. So rather than following like a bunch of like losers. I follow like a lot of like heritage properties, and then once you see them, you can follow other ones, and people who travel like in the way that you want to be traveling. I think it's a really cool way to kind of stay up to date because it basically allows me to get a hold. Like now in India, I could probably plan like any itinerary because I just like see this stuff all the time on my feed. I know exactly where I want to go. So just like curating your social media space in such a way can really help you understand travel a little bit better, and it can probably help you plan itineraries like in a really fun and offbeat way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time.
You guys,
For
let me
sharing.
know if you guys have any other questions for me.
Of course, and you guys can contact her as well. We'll be linking her information in the comments, description, etc. So, well, we hope you take these tips into consideration, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.